This is Aaron Ferrucci. You may not immediately recognize his name or face, but you definitely know some of the artists that he's worked with. Major labels started hiring this kid when he was only 18 years old, and he's the most brutally honest music producer I've ever met. I couldn't even set up this interview without getting yelled at.
Is the mic quite low? Are you just recording them low? Yeah, you are. They're really low.
But why is this seemingly random producer of any importance to you? I'll tell you why. I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of music courses and programs and audio schools and universities, but what you may not be as familiar with is good old-fashioned producer development. Some would call producer development the cheat code to confidence, and many professional producers are using this to save their businesses and careers. Ever since the pandemic, business has gotten trickier for freelance music producers because the playing field has been leveled dramatically. And that's why I called Aaron as a secret weapon. For the past year, I've watched him develop some of my producers on the creative side, transforming them from very good to truly world-class, which is a difference that I'm not even sure I really understood until recently. And what was the result? Well, their businesses improved dramatically, more income, more clients, more interesting deals, better reputation, really everything that my producers are looking for. All spawned from a higher level of confidence many of them had never experienced before, despite working in this industry for many years. So I'm honored to share with you a conversation that I had with Aaron that will demystify what real producer development actually looks like, because it might be the piece that you're missing in your career.
There
he is. All right.
What are you saying?
Woo.
Oh, we're doing it.
So we work with a lot of producers who are already earning a full-time living producing music, right? What are the most common production mistakes you still often hear from producers at that level? Because they come in and they say, well, I'm getting paid already, so that must mean I'm good. Mm-hmm. But then they quickly learn that they're good, obviously. People pay them, but their bar is not up where you hope it would be. What are mistakes that they're still making, even being paid producers?
A lot of these guys are as good as their client's ears too. So that's like a really interesting thing. And a lot of them come in expecting to be hitting like top end sessions and whatever else. And we'll just do comparative things between their work and some songs that they're aspiring to get to. The big difference for me is often vocal production and how much emphasis is put on it, how much time is spent on it, how intricate you are with like the minute details, and making sure that you're really serving the song. The next big thing that I've kind of come up that just seen a lot of is how well they construct like a narrative through the production, how well individual elements evolve throughout the records. So it's less block form and less loopy, and there's always some sort of development within the instrumental, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It can like be tiny automations or whatever, but it's just some sort of development, and there's a way more kind of clearer story built around the song.
A lot of producers want to learn from famous, highly credited producers. Obviously, that's their heroes, who they look up to. However, my experience, because I've tried to hire a lot of people to teach right on the production side, many of them are just not great teachers. Mm-hmm. They can demonstrate what they do to other people. They can demonstrate it really well, but they aren't really developing the producer's skills. It's still kind of on the producer to figure that out. So demonstrating something and developing a producer, teaching them versus developing them. Mm-hmm. What's the difference?
For me, it is about seeing where they are at and working from them and the things they're working on, as opposed to just teaching them things you have done. So the big difference for me would be the split between, okay, cool, here's a song I've done, here's a project that's good and you lot really like. Here, I'll break down how I made it. There's some value in that, and you're going to learn different techniques and you're going to learn how I would approach things. But in terms of developing a producer, there's a longer conversation around like what they want to do, how they want to sound, where they want to go, and so you understand more of why they're trying to do a certain thing. And then looking at the work that they're creating, and we'll break it down to like STEM level, and I'll go through their projects. and I'll ask a lot of direct questions about why they're doing X and Y, and then give them alternatives. And then also maybe I don't feel they've hit their mark as well as maybe I would have done it if I'd approached it differently. And I'll introduce that. And it's kind of doing that process over and over again and working with them over a series of months that you'll see like a tremendous amount of growth, as opposed to just, here's how I do things, I can demonstrate things, you'll learn this one specific thing, but it doesn't have any sort of like tie back to something you've done. And for me, I found like the most effective way to learn was when things were tied to things that I had done, because I already had like a good amount of emotional connection to those things. So I understood that in so much depth. So I understood what I was working in as much depth as I could, because that was my limit, right? That was where I thought things were finished. And then it took someone kind of pushing that for me to be like, oh, that my ceiling's raised. And then doing that kind of over and over again.
So it's almost like, you know, great producer's job is to help the artist sort of get to that vision in their head.
Yeah.
This is a version of a producer helping another producer get to that vision in their head for the artist.
Yeah, you're like producing the producer, essentially, in a weird way. Because, the producer's ultimate job, at least for me, is just serve the song and serve the artist. And that may mean sometimes the producer has to take the lead. That may mean sometimes they sit back, and you just understand over time to just fill your role in the room and in that project. You're doing that for the producer, but just in a way more holistic way than you will in a textbook or a demonstration or anything else. And I think the other thing is just passion for teaching and people learning is a big difference. Like, one of my main drivers is just building something that I didn't have coming up, because I had to go sort of the long way around in many regards, right? And I kind of discovered that there's way easier ways to do this, and that for me is like a big passion driver. So I just have a lot of energy for doing it.
I've seen you make a producer redo the same part 1 million times. You're one of the most honest and blunt production coaches I've seen out of any course or school or anything I've been a part of. Mm-hmm. Why are you that way?
Sure.
And is it always best to be that way?
Sure. I'm that way because it's how I would want someone to treat me. So whenever I'm trying to do things, I always think first, how would I want to be treated? Same thing with networking, with anything else, right? And I think that it saves a lot of time. I think it's also good to get used to just very direct feedback and getting comfortable with that, because you're going to experience that a ton if you choose to like take this seriously as a career. And just being very comfortable with the fact that it's not being said to criticize the human. It's just there to say, cool, we can make this better. Let's make some fast steps. Here's how. And detaching your kind of self-worth from, well, not completely, but from your self-worth, from your creation helps a lot. Is it always the best way to go? I think it's probably the most, at least I found it to be the most effective in terms of, there's that initial hump of it's 50-50. People either love it and they're like, oh, this is amazing. Like, I don't have anyone that will just give me very frank, direct advice, or just kind of break things down like this. Some people will kind of they'll take a step back and they'll say, okay, that's pretty heavy. And then the thank you usually comes the next day, because it's for a lot of people, it's easy. Like, having sugar-coated advice doesn't really get you anywhere. It's like, oh, everything's great or whatever. When it's not, there's no use. And I feel they're coming to us to just get advice, essentially, and have things be very frank and let them know that at least this is where I think things are at, and the other guys in the community too. So I would say yes, but also there'll be some characters that take it one way or the other, but the general consensus is that it's for the best.
And for those that don't take blunt feedback well, a little defensive maybe.
Sure. What
does that say about them as a producer, if anything?
Oftentimes it shows me, is like usually inexperience, at like a higher level, because there's times where I'm working with artists and they're just like, no, it's just not it. You've not done X. Can we try this? And they're saying that not because like they're like, oh, you suck. It's not that at all. It's like I want this song to be here and it's not here yet. And that's like will build some like internal frustration for them, right? And so the best thing, at least I found in my career, because I definitely went through that, and I used to take things very much to heart, and it would affect how I would look at certain situations. Was just, hey, like I'm just trying to get to the end product. How the quickest way I can get there and the most effective way I can get there is all that really matters. And kind of detaching that my first approach doesn't have to be the best. It doesn't have to be it. I don't have to have nailed it every time.
So what else do you feel like schools, online courses, YouTube videos are missing when it comes to developing your skill sets as a producer?
Sure. I think so much that you learn on the job, and that you cannot learning in traditional schooling environments, and it's something we've tried to create, is just the experience of a producer too. Now, so much goes into preparing for sessions, how you act in sessions, the kind of psychological element, the post-session, dealing with clients, dealing with everything to do with that. Purely on the production side of things, where we've tried to I guess replicate that, is I'm looking at building their portfolio. I'm looking at how can I best represent this producer based on the market they want to serve and the genres they want to be across, and how well are they hitting those genres. And we'll do that by doing like regular sessions on just their work and how we can improve track by track and look at how we can progress them. Not just looking at here is an example of something great. It's here is an example of your work and how can we take your work to the next level, and do that over and over again. Also, what are the sort of people you should be collaborating with? How are you gonna develop yourself as a producer in terms of your social skills? How are you going to get better at getting better songs out of songwriters, getting better songs out of artists, getting better performances out of people when you're recording? And it's a case of, cool, we'll bring in some of my network, some of the other guys' networks, to have great classes with them, but also to work with them directly, where they'll be coaching them directly, and I have like some of my songwriter friends doing direct sessions with clients, where we're essentially replicating like major label style sessions. You've got very quick turnarounds. You've got the sessions are quite short. You're expected to prepare pretty quickly. It's going to be kind of very sink or swim. And then there's the coaching element afterwards to say, cool, maybe you could have approached this a bit better when I was doing this. I would have liked you to pop in and say this. When we're recording, I'd like this. You've got 2-3 days to turn this around and get the record back to me. Then I'm going to give you feedback. And it's just here, we just expose them to the bar that like they're going to want to work at if that's what they want to do. And a lot of guys come to us like leaving places that I would consider like super reputable and like awesome schools, just having no idea. And I definitely had no idea, but I also didn't go to a music school. I learned the long way of just kind of doing session after session, and then just was very fortunate to work with some incredible artists and be mentored by some really good people too. And so you pick that up along the way, but it's definitely something that you can replicate. It's just if it's done with the right intentions too. So
I think it's especially important for producers who don't get the experience of living kind of in an industry city, which you don't have to live in one to make a living at all. But I can tell a massive difference generally between the ones that do, because they're in sessions all the time. They may not be making a lot of money yet, they may still need help on the business side, but just on the creative side, you can tell the ones that have been in sessions, every day for years amongst people who are highly skilled. It just forces you to raise your bar up, or you're just not going to get called back. It's throwing you into the fire, right? That is one of the benefits that I know I got. I know you grew up in a music city. I moved to one or a couple of them actually later on in life. And that was the thing I got. You got to say Oh, wow. Okay, cool. And I think some of these universities used to be like that.
Yep, for sure.
But I think because of just, universities aren't as popular anymore for music, they kind of take anyone who's willing to pay. So it doesn't quite have that same like, okay, if you're going here, you're going to be around the best of the best because we only accept the best of the best. I think a lot of these schools used to be like that and are probably still a little bit like that, but not as much. So it's not setting that bar for you there like it used to be. And even if they're very good and talented, they are all still students.
Yep.
So it isn't the same as like, I just came up in studios, you came up in studios,
Yep.
different sort of thing.
Well, something we spoke a lot about was just like, how can we replicate this? And it was a case of tapping my network and bringing in people that are doing it now. So it's like they are very aware of what's going on because every day they are doing big sessions and the sort of sessions all these guys want to be in. And also picking the sort of people that have a passion for coaching and are willing to like just interact with these guys and give them pointers, as well as exposing the sort of level they would need to work out. And all of the feedback has been great, but the thing that's more important for me is just like how transformational it's been for their skill set, because they come back now understanding things need to be quick, understanding that they need to just have their stuff together when they're producing, but more so understanding that the human is so important, like spending that time just talking. Like it takes, like when you're in good flow, it's like 30 minutes to an hour to write a great song and get a kind of demo going, but getting to that point can take forever. And so much of that is just about how comfortable you make someone feel and how, like, what your just social skills are like, right? And just throwing people into those environments so they can see how important that is means it's very much less about them. They kind of learn to just put the ego aside and put, like, I guess mentally they go into it preparing and be like, oh, I need to impress, I need to do X, I need to do Y. And it's like, oftentimes the less you push yourself onto this song and this session, the better the song's going to be. And just be there and be very responsive, which is not like reacting just emotionally, but responding with like logic and emotion. So you can kind of see the session for what it is. And then just allowing yourself to be really open, allow things to be bad, have the freedom to put ideas out there and they not be great, and have the kind of, I guess, EQ and emotional intelligence to be able to tell someone that something's not so good, and it doesn't ruin the vibe in the room. But like little things, it's like cool when you're in sessions, it's like never kill an idea unless you had one, because you've just killed the room. And knowing when to stop, knowing when to go for coffee, knowing when to talk, knowing when to start ideas. And for me, that's like been amazing to see just how guys can take that away from those sessions, and that how transformational that's been.
Below in the description, I've put a link to a webpage that goes deeper into producer development, both on the creative and business side. Check that out if you're interested. And if you want to hear Aaron's strategy for navigating the major label world, watch this video next.